Welcome to the Ride This Out podcast, where we talk about how to improve your mental health and strengthen your connection to nature and your community, all through one simple solution: the bicycle. My name is Zach Golding, and I'm a licensed clinical social worker and mental health therapist. I'll be your host as we discuss the power of pedaling. All right, welcome into this week's session. I talk with Adam Porter of Mesa, Arizona. Adam is a father of 5, an avid gravel cyclist, and a children's author. He wrote a children's book entitled Morning Ride, which talks about a gravel cyclist journey, an adventure in the morning. It's a wonderful book. It's a beautiful book. We talk all about it. I highly suggest you pick up a copy. You can find it on Amazon. It's a wonderful read. It'd be a great present for any cyclist enthusiast in your life, especially with kids. Give them something to read with their kids. The thing that I loved about this conversation that I talked with Adam about is the intersection of how bicycle riding and other creative outlets kind of intersect and play a big part in our lives, and how he used his love for bicycle riding and incorporated that into this children's story to teach some wonderful lessons. So thanks, Adam, for being on the show. If you enjoy this podcast, please give me a rating, a like, a subscribe, share it with other people that you might think would benefit from it, and enjoy this week's session with Adam. Adam, thanks for taking some time. If you want to just go ahead and introduce yourself, who you are, where you're from, family life, just all those good things. So go ahead.
Yeah, absolutely. And Zach, it's a pleasure to meet you, and thanks for having me on your podcast. Just some background on me. Just turned 40 this last year. I've got 5 kids, ranging from 14 is the oldest, and they're every 2 years all the way down to 6. So the whole family is actually, funny enough, we're on an odd and even schedule together. In the same year, we all hit odd numbers or even numbers within the year. So that's kind of fun. 14 down to 6. I live in Mesa, Arizona. I've been here for a really long time, pretty much my whole life since I was 3. My parents moved out from Georgia, and I've been into cycling for about, I'd say it's 4 years now, in a more serious kind of a way. And I'm sure we'll get more into that too. But for work, I work for a large financial institution. I'm a sales consultant, so I help teach professional selling skills and coaching skills to leadership teams and the folks that they work with. So yeah, that's a little bit about me.
Nice. And the most important piece, and that's why you're on the show, is you're an author, Adam.
Yeah, that's a new thing. That's something that came about in the last couple of years. So yeah, definitely love that, and it's been a fun journey to get into that too.
Yeah. So talk to us a little bit about your book, this children's book. Like, what motivated that? What inspired that? What made you want to write this story?
Yeah, absolutely. So the book is called Morning Ride, and there's a lot I want to say about it here. So I'm excited that we're going to talk about it. But just to kind of go to how it came about. Funny enough, I've been trying to, just as a, we homeschool our kids. So, I'm kind of the primary money earner in the family, right? So I've been thinking for years about, like, what kind of side hustle do I want to have? What would be something I could, like, take my regular corporate job, but also have something on the side that I was passionate about and excited about and fueled creativity and things like that, right? So I've been thinking about that and searching for that for a little while. And then truthfully, like, just maybe this is how some ideas come to people, right? Like, but I was reading a book to my kids one night, my 3 younger kids, and we were sitting there reading this book that we love, just this great, kind of peaceful type of a book that's really nice to read before you go to bed. And we were flipping through this book, reading it. We always enjoy reading it. And, like, it's a book that has a lot of details in it where you can point things out and go, oh, check this out. Like, look at that bird over there. Look, there's a deer hidden in the background, right? Like, so there's all these kind of cool elements to it. And we read through that book. I tucked them in, I usually just sit there with them for, 20, 30 minutes as they're falling asleep and talk to them or whatever. But after I read that book that night, I just sat there and I went, why wouldn't there be a book like this about bikes? like I would love to have a book that's more like reflective of the kind of writing I might do, that I see, online and things like that. So that idea just sort of planted in my head that, hey, that'd be cool if there was something like, bike book for kids. So of course I went online and looked at some things to see what else was out there already. But as I was looking around, I didn't really see something that was like kind of fit that vision that initially hit me in my head there. Reading to the kids that night. And maybe it was a couple days later, the second part of the idea hit me of, well, I could make it. I could put this together, and like I think I've got an idea for it. And then, it was a couple months in the making, honestly, of just like thinking through, a couple ideas, putting some thoughts together in terms of some of the elements I would want to have as part of that book. And you know, uh, I don't know if I want to give into the rest of the story of going on to make it, but that's sort of how it started. So it's just really this sort of like at night reading to the kids and thinking like, hey, I've been into this biking thing for a little bit, and I would love to have something I could read to my kids that incorporated that experience and what cycling is all about.
Yeah, and then what was that next step like going into the process of making
Yeah.
it? Because I've always wondered how that rolls out.
Yeah. So I mean, the process was, part of a fun part of the journey here in a lot of ways, but also like, challenging too. It took me, I think, from that night of having that idea until I actually held the book in my hands, which was, I think we got it maybe 3 or 4 days before my 40th birthday. It was kind of like a cool little milestone hitting there right before I turned 40. But that process took about a year and a half from having the idea to actually making the book. And I would say a majority of that was the process to find someone to draw it. So I am not an artist. I have zero skill when it comes to drawing. My kids are great; like they're creative. They have a lot of fun with drawing, but I was not gifted that skill. Maybe one day I have interest in learning it. So who knows what will happen one day? Maybe I'll be illustrating some books too. But so that was a big part of the process. I initially reached out to a friend at work who I knew was an artist, and we started brainstorming together and got really excited. And then he had some life circumstances going on that prevented him from being part of the project. I reached out to a couple. I ended up finding some other people that had some of those skills, and I would say it was, I think, 5 people that I went through that we got started. It was like excitement, like, hey, we're going to do this. This is going to be great. They loved the idea. They were really pumped about it. But then something would come up where it didn't work out for them to do it. Right. So I just went through person after person. There were certainly moments in there where I was thinking, like, I don't know if this is going to happen. I'm not sure I'm going to be able to land this because I didn't have the means to go out and pay someone like 10 grand to do a book like that, right? Which is some of the going rate when you look at like really professional illustrators, right? That's maybe a little high, but you know what I mean. It was more money than I had available to do that for what some people would charge for that. So I was just searching around and ended up finding Alyssa Whetstone, who's the illustrator of the book, and she is awesome. I mean, she was just professional as can be. She's great. I mean, the number one thing that like I take away from working with her is just how amazed I've been at how she took what I put together and made it into a real page. That was like, wow, I was like, what was in my head? Like, how did you do that? Like she did such a great job. So yeah, so much of that process was locating and eventually landing on Alyssa as the illustrator. She's great. She's an art teacher. She lives in Minnesota. She actually just came through a connection of my wife's. She had helped illustrate a book for someone that she knew. So I was able to, connect with her, and it's been fantastic working with her ever since.
Yeah, and it's a beautiful book for sure. I got a copy of it last week. I love it. It's a great book. It's amazing.
Awesome.
And what you were talking about, like the attention to detail, what you were going for, that's what I really stuck out to me within the book is
Yeah.
because I feel like, the description of the sounds and of the feels and the sights, and just the early morning quiet and stillness. And then, yeah, the
Right.
artwork that goes along with it. It's beautiful, so I feel like a lot of people in the day of, AI, artificial intelligence, you could have
Yeah.
just typed something in there and had it spit out whatever, right? So,
Right.
did you think about doing that, or did you want to have like the real life art?
Not really. I never really considered pursuing that just because, I really sort of valued. I remember when I first met with my friend at work who was an artist, like we had a great conversation about how important it is to have beautiful art in books like this with kids. And I, as a dad, I really enjoy that. Any of the books that I sort of gravitate towards and read with the kids are typically ones that to me have this like, wow, someone really put some time and effort into the details of this work here. And it's inspiring to look at. I love talking to my kids about it and even discussing like, man, how hard would this have been to draw and like create this, right? How creative this person was to do that. So that element was always really important to me. I wanted to have a real natural feel to it. And, I wanted part of the experience of it to be like, this is a hand drawn, hand painted, book here. So that was always really important to me as I started off on this because I wanted it to look beautiful and I wanted it to be something that kids, would be able to look at and sort of be inspired too about riding bikes. It's like, man, when you get out and you get to ride a bike, I mean, I experience this every time I go for a ride. And there's something at some point that captures me from nature, from the views that I get on the rides that makes you feel great, and I wanted that to be part of the book is that like, check this out. If you get into a hobby like this, like you get to enjoy these peaceful moments in nature um, along with it. So yeah, that was definitely an important part was the true artwork side of it.
Yeah, I love it, and the colors and just the detail of it, and, the words as well. I mean, as you're, again, describing the sound of the tires on the gravel road and, once it hits the pavement and you hear the wind chimes and, just all those beautiful things, it's you did a masterful job. We love it, and as I've been reading it to my oldest son, he's, almost 7, and we go for
Nice.
rides every morning. We'll ride to
Yeah.
school, and, it's always fun to, again, point out the little things, but as I've been reading it with him, the thing that he loves the most about it is the little computer that's up in the top right-hand
Oh
corner,
yeah. Yep.
of the
Yeah.
pages. Yeah, that's so fun because, in a lot of different children's books, there's always some little thing that you always find on each page, but what he loves about that is that it shows the map, like, "Oh, how far is the writer
Right.
gone?" And then in each
Yep.
page, it just kinda shows progressively and progressively, so, yeah, I love that detail, that's beautiful.
Yeah. That was kind of a part that hit me early on too, is like when I started coming up with the ideas for the book, I didn't want it to be a silly book. Like lots of kids' books are silly, right? And it's goofy and it's like kid oriented, and that's great. I mean, there's nothing wrong with that. Certainly, kids love that kind of stuff. But just like the vision I had for this one was, this would be a book that you know serious cyclists would be able to look at and identify with, and be able to like note those kind of details and say, "Yep, I have a bike computer too, right? And this is the kind of stuff I look at when I'm riding my bike, right?" So I wanted to have those details of, you know, not only sort of balancing like anyone can pick up the book and enjoy it, because I think even if someone wasn't a cyclist, I would hope that they would enjoy the book and enjoy some of those details. But for the person, like yourself, like when I'm going riding, like I love the chance to connect with my kids in a different way through those kind of details to say like, yeah, this is the kind of bike I ride, right? Like this is a real gravel bike here. It's we have the bike computer, the lights, the gear, the different things like that that kind of show up throughout the book. Like I just wanted the person that was really into the hobby to be like, yeah, that's what I have going on, right? Like I can identify with that.
Yeah, and it always makes, story time a little bit more enjoyable when you are engaged in the book. Because I don't know I
Right.
don't know about you, but
Exactly.
sometimes I've read, you know, 3 or 4 books to my kids, and I don't even remember any of them. I'm just kind of
Sure.
in
Yeah.
robot, reading mode, but that's one that definitely caught my attention. It's
Yeah.
great.
That's a good maybe benefit for the parents there too. As they read it, they might go like, you know what? I should just ride tomorrow morning. Like after reading this book, it's like I was, maybe debating it. Maybe I don't have time, but it's like, yeah, I think I can get that ride in.
Yeah, no, honestly, that's definitely a benefit from reading it, definitely. So I mean, you talked about really kind of getting serious into bicycle riding about 4 years ago. I'm curious,
Yeah.
like, how'd you get into it? What kind of riding do you do? Yeah, what does that look like for you?
Yeah. So I'd say maybe 2 years before that, I picked up this old Schwinn, like I guess it was a hybrid bike. I got it at Goodwill. It was really not a great bike at all, right? But it didn't matter. And I rode that a little bit. A buddy of mine, um, he had I think he got a mountain bike at the time, was riding that a little bit. And we just started talking about riding. We did a little bit, right? And that sort of simmered down for a while. Then really in 2020, this buddy of mine, he really got into cycling a little bit more. He got himself a legit road bike, and started riding and inviting me along on that a little bit. So I started riding with him. I had that old Schwinn, and I just sort of was getting like, I feel like this thing is, not not doing me any favors here. So I ended up going a different route. And this is another interesting part of my cycling piece is I was just, one for budgetary reasons, I wasn't gonna go out and buy a brand new like $8,000 bike yet, right? I was just early in the hobby. Um, and I gravitated towards Cannondale bikes. Just looking online, looking on Craigslist or OfferUp, or I was looking at what bikes I could buy, and those really stood out to me in terms of just love the kind of the vintage late 90s, early 2000s style. So I picked up a 2003 Cannondale road bike, and love that one. And we just started riding and getting into things. And we just as two dads, me and my buddy there, we just enjoyed sort of the chance to get out and be in nature and de-stress from work and things like that. So just sort of went from there, and to the point where doing some races now and things like that. I mean, I wouldn't say I compete seriously. I'm definitely an amateur, definitely not at some high level of proficiency there, but love being part of those events and just sort of that challenge to yourself. I mean, that's really when I go, like the challenges for myself. So I'm going to Unbound gravel in June here in Kansas, and my challenge there is, hey, I want to beat my time from last year. Like I have no hopes of competing seriously in what I'm doing there, but I want to challenge myself and do better and better each time.
Yeah. How long of a ride is that at Unbound?
They've got all the way from, I think it's 200 or 250 is the biggest one. And they've got 100. I've done the 50. This will be my third year in a row doing the 50-mile.
Heck yeah. And
Yeah.
that's all gravel, right?
Yeah. I mean, I think you get maybe 2 miles on through some streets, in the city and then downtown area kind of thing. But yeah, vast majority of it is all gravel out in in the hills and some of the farmland out there. So it's a pretty beautiful spot. And, really have enjoyed being a part of that event for the last couple of years.
That's awesome. So is that mostly the riding that you do is gravel riding? You do some mountain biking, road biking, just kind of all mixed together?
I would say I primarily do more gravel riding. So here in Arizona, we have these canal systems that run through the city, and they're pretty much dirt gravel roads, or sidebars to these canals with water. So that's a lot of what I do, is because that's really easy. There's like 3 different ones close by my house that I can jump onto and ride 20, 30 miles no problem without really dealing with much traffic or anything. So I started out more road biking, but I've gravitated towards the gravel biking a lot more. I just enjoy the peacefulness of being away from cars and just being able to ride out somewhere. So that part, pulled at me there. And, part of my, collecting of classic Cannondales led there too. So I've got 7 Cannondales at this point that are all from that same era. And there's sort of this rare one that's in there. It's a cyclocross Cannondale bike that I've hunted them down for years, and I have 4 of them at this point. It's the same bike, which is kind of silly. So I've got 4 of the same bike, just in different colors, different years, and I've sort of fixed them up and put some new gear on them. But finding that like sort of rare collectible one has been sort of a fun thing and made me want to ride it more too.
I love it. Some people might call that an obsession, but that's just a hobby.
Right? Yeah. Right. Yeah.
It's just a good.
It's
That's
just
just a
yeah.
good hobby, Adam.
Yeah, yeah, no, I enjoy it. I've got a nice little spot to keep them, so they're all kind of hanging out together, and it's been fun to toy around with that.
Love it. You're, 5 kids. For one, how do you
Yeah.
find time to ride just by yourself? And another thing, do you ever go on rides with them too? Do you kind of teach them the sport as well, the lifestyle? How does that go?
Yeah. Yeah, so we do ride together. I wouldn't say like every day or anything, but I'd say a couple times a week we'll get out and either just ride around the neighborhood, or we'll jump on one of the canals like I mentioned, and ride around there together. So we definitely enjoy it. I mean, those are great memories with the kids. Like I think all through the years, different stages, different bikes. Going from the first one, when they could just learn how to ride and pedal without training wheels, all the way up until like my oldest daughter is full adult size now, and she can ride a regular bike. So yeah, I mean, we definitely enjoy that. Me and my oldest son, who's 10 right now, like we talk about him getting into an event with me at some point and doing like an Unbound type of a thing at a lower amount of miles, for now at least, but I'm sure he'll catch up to me pretty quick. So we definitely enjoy that. I think it's a great, really kind of bonding time with the kids to get to ride together and experience that and see different things along the way, right? Just to kind of sort of enjoy that. We've got the spot, 5 minutes from our house that's got this like ramp or hill on it. So like the kids just love going down there and riding down this hill, time after time. So things like that, just those small things that you find that's like, hey, they love this and we're spending time together. We get to talk, right? It's great.
Yeah. Does your wife ride bikes too?
Um, I have pulled her into a handful of rides, but it's not necessarily her favorite. So she loves that I'm into it. Loves everything that's kind of come from me being into the hobby, but not her favorite activity, I would say. She doesn't not like it, but it's just not something she would, easily heads towards.
Sure. No, yeah, that's all good. So, yeah, again, when you have 5 kids, when you're working full time, when you're doing all these things, yeah, what's your tip or your secret of, like, how you find time to ride, like, just for you or, with your buddy or whatever? How do you kinda make that
Yeah.
time?
Yeah, it could definitely be difficult, depending on how much craziness is going on at work that week or, with the family. But I just, really try and find a lot of times it's early morning. That's probably one of my biggest secrets there of doing it is just getting up way before anybody else, which, could have been part of the subconscious piece about the book, going with a morning ride up early in the morning before anyone else is. So that's probably my number one thing is just trying to do it in a way that's least disruptive to the family altogether, right? So it's like if we have something going on, I'm back by the time, and we've got teenagers, right? So they could sleep until noon every day, but if we're getting up earlier to go do something, it's like I can be back before anyone's really gotten up and gotten going. And I kind of like that too, like just the kids seeing, oh, like dad was up really early, he's doing something he enjoys. Like I think that's a good thing for them to see. That's one of the main things, and I've at different times I've tried to find some other creative ways. Like I mentioned, I think to you before we started, like my son has baseball practice, and I might go ride a little bit while he's at practice, and then be back right in time to pick him up there. So things like that. But I think it's just keeping it top of mind. I think having a friend to go ride with too sometimes helps. Like that'll help with my friend that I've mentioned here is that hey, if we're both going to ride, that it helps bring that motivation. Like, let's just go for it. We have to get up at 5 a.m. Like, let's both make it happen, and we're accountable to each other. Because it's like if I sleep in and he's at my door or he's waiting for me at the place, it's like like we don't want that, right? So I gotta make sure I get up and make it happen.
Well, in Arizona too, I mean, you gotta ride early morning, right? Because it gets just so hot out there.
Yeah, when the summer comes around, that's really your only choice. Although it's really helpful, like training for something like Unbound. Like if you get spend some time out in the heat, like that helps acclimate you to what you're going to experience there. It's a different kind of heat in Kansas, but still helps you out. But yeah, for sure, early in the morning is, the only time it's going to be semi-pleasant in the middle of the summer. Even then, it's still hot. It's still probably 100 degrees when you're going out.
Yeah. No, and absolutely, I hear you. That's, a lot of the rides that I'll do as far as, like I do a lot of mountain biking and road biking and stuff, but early morning, yeah, while the kids are still sleeping, there's just something about that golden hour in the morning, watching the sunrise, and again, in your book, I love that that's a big piece of it, the
Yeah,
rider just stops at the top of the hill and just takes in the sunrise, because I think that's just such a beautiful part of riding, and just kinda
yeah.
helps calm you down and get you out and get you moving.
Right. There's a purposefulness there too with the book of, each page has text and writing in it, right? But when I came to that spot of him up at the top of the mountain looking over at the sunrise, I purposely just let that blank of like there's no words to describe it. It kind of takes a nice pause. And that's sort of how it feels, when you are on these rides and you come to this point where you stop and soak something in. That's sort of it just has it's a big pause. You're pausing in your thoughts, you're pausing in, what you're thinking about there and just sort of checking out what's in front of you and enjoying like, hey, I made it to this point and it's been a great journey to get there. So I enjoyed that part of the book because that's kind of how it feels in real life.
Yeah, absolutely, and that's what I was gonna mention too. There's no words on that page. It's
Hmm.
just the sunrise, and you can just kinda take it in.
Yeah,
Very, similar to, yeah, an everyday ride in the morning as well, um, and and I say this a lot with the different guests that have been on this, podcast is you're not the only one that has talked about, just the sunrise rides and what that does for just, basically your soul, right? It just like
Yeah.
you connect with nature and just all those things. So yeah, for you when you ride, that was what I wanted to ask you. Like, how does it help you, mentally, your overall wellness, physically? Just yeah, what are the benefits that have you seen?
Yeah. I mean, I think it's huge, honestly. So I'm kind of an idea person. Like I thrive off of ideas. I'm always thinking of ideas about things. And honestly, cycling is sort of a place where I ideate. So if I'm having a problem at work, that I've been thinking through and figuring out, I can't tell you how many times I've come back from a bike ride going like, I got it. I came up with the plan, with the idea of how I'm going to solve this problem or how I'm going to face this difficulty or whatever it may be. If it's things in life that I'm figuring out, I find that, if I'm, hey, life is expensive. You're working on money troubles, right? It's like sometimes on those rides, you come back with an idea there, right? If it's, hey, one of my kids is, struggling with something, I'll take that ride and think about, some way to help them, right? So it's just like, I think it's just a place for me where I get a lot of thinking done and, many, many times come back feeling like I either have some more peace about it just because I've thought it through more, or I actually have some type of a solution in mind that I want to give a try to whatever it is that I may be facing. So that's, in terms of like those times in life where you're thinking through something like that, that's been the benefit for me in cycling. Otherwise, I definitely just feel a general peacefulness through the activity. I think sitting in front of a computer most of the day at the kind of job that I have, right? Like I think just that chance to unplug from that and be out in nature. I mean, I've got this great ride that's right outside of my house. I can jump on one of those canals and it takes you out by the Salt River in Mesa, and I can land at the spot in the river in about 35 minutes. So I can be, which is kind of a weird thing, like growing up in Arizona, like we didn't really go to many of the lakes that are here, but there is actually a couple of lakes that are right in the middle of the desert. And this one I can be to in about 35 minutes. That's been one of my favorite places to go, just to hit that destination, be by some running water for 10, 15 minutes before heading back home, and just that peacefulness that you get from being out in nature in that way. And I think to me, water has, maybe it's because I grew up in Arizona, I don't know, like water has this significant sort of feeling to that too, of being by that. So yeah, I think it's just a lot of the problem solving, ideating that I get to do is helpful for me mentally, and then the peacefulness through nature, I think that I get to experience through those rides.
Yeah, and I think everyone that rides consistently, they have their spot, right? Like this
Yeah, yeah.
is I love going to this one spot and it never gets old, just
Hmm.
arriving there and you just have that moment of, meditation or just kind of reflection. That's
Yeah,
powerful. So that's cool. And I'm with
yeah.
you all the way with that as well. We have a lot of mountains out here. And so as you kind of traverse up some mountains, you can kind of then see out and there's a big lake that a lot of times you
Oh,
forget that's
awesome.
there.
Yeah,
And you're
yeah.
just like, oh yeah, there's this lake here, there's this mountain here. You just kind of forget. And again, going back to your book, what I love about writing, and then you capture this so well in your book, is it opens up your senses, right? It opens up that side, it opens up the sound, it opens up your surroundings to nature, and you're able to just take it in. So then those ideas can come and that thought process. Yeah, it's a powerful tool. I mean, it's magic. It's great. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. No, it really is. And I think that's the cool thing about the book too. Just like I hope that, even just through the kids reading this, they feel a little bit of that through reading the book, right? Because I feel like that's what I really wanted to capture. I said I didn't want it to be like a silly kids bike book. I wanted it to really reflect the type of rides. Because I'm on different social media, I'm on Facebook groups where people post about their rides all the time, right? One of your previous guests you had on, a different Adam. I started following him on Instagram after listening to your podcast and like checking out all his cool pictures, right? And it's just like this great thing that you get to experience, but I wanted it to reflect those real rides that people take. And I see it posted on social media, people just like seeing that lake in your area, right? Whatever those things are, like that's what I commonly see people experience on their rides, just their favorite places, like simple little stops along the way. So I would hope that kids would get a little bit of that feeling through reading the book too, because they may not, depending on their ages, they may not be going on 30-mile rides or anything like that to get too far out there. But you know, um, yeah, I think just to get to experience that a little bit through the book would be great.
One thing too that I've recognized, and that's really cool that you're doing this, and as you're kind of thinking about at the genesis of your book is you're like, oh, what can I do? As just kind of like a side income or whatever. the intersection of cycling with so many people's like hobbies and drive, like whether it be creative outlet through photography or filmmaking or
Oh yeah.
writing about it, or I've had some guests on that they use their bicycle to sew things and to make things, and just to connect
Oh
with other
wow.
people. And again, just the intersection that bicycle riding has with almost everything in our lives, right? With our kids, with our jobs, with just getting out, and how that just kind of boosts our overall ability to think things through and help in that
Yeah.
creative process. It's amazing.
Yeah, I mentioned too, like that, some of my ideation started with like that side hustle idea. That's still, some part of it, but overall, like I think for this one, and when I started, I remember telling my kids and everyone just like, hey, if I never sell a single book, I really don't care. Like, if you guys enjoy it, my kids, if you all enjoy it, we have this in our family. Like, look at this cool thing that was created. Like I would be perfectly happy with that, right? And that's sort of been my outlook from the start is like, hey, if anyone gets some joy from it, that's amazing. I would share one story that kind of came my way so far from doing this is that, I posted it in different social media, Facebook groups just to like share it and everything. And I had um, uh, someone reach out to me who mentioned that this was a grandmother with her. She had a granddaughter, and the grandfather had passed away, and he was a cyclist. And she was so excited to get the book to be able to share with her granddaughter and make this connection about the grandpa. It sounds like, I mean, I didn't, I didn't get to talk with him extensively, but it sounded like there's really some special relationships there between the grandpa, the granddaughter, and the grandma there, and cycling was a part of that. And that was one of the best moments I've had in creating this whole thing is getting a picture of the granddaughter on Christmas morning holding the book up and the grandma reaching out to me and thanking me for, for creating the book and like what a special memory and like way to connect with her granddaughter, who I think was maybe 5, to be able to share about the grandpa who was into cycling. So it's like that I was done right there, right? It's like if this is all
Okay.
that ever happens from this book, I am happy, I'm pleased, like that's just an amazing thing. So those are the kinds of things I'm shooting for with this is like helping to create those connections between whether it's the grandparents or the parents and the kids, but sharing like some of the special things that come about through cycling. So like I said, like that story alone was just like if we were done at this point, retired the bike thing here, like this would be fine with me. But I'm happy that I get to keep doing it and hopefully create other opportunities like that.
Yeah, that's what I was going to ask. Is there other books kind of in the works, or you've been thinking about doing some other ones with it, or well, yeah, what's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, so I'm really excited about where I would hope to go with this whole effort. To create, I want to have a handful of books that parents could go to, to enjoy the hobby of cycling along with it. So, I'm at the time we're recording this, I think I'm a month and a half away from releasing a second book. Um, and that one's going to be a race oriented book. So sort of going through the experience of what it's like to be in a gravel bike race. And we've got one of the things I would want to mention about writing these books is I almost didn't want to like name the character or really call much attention at all to the person who's writing, right? Because it's just like I want you to feel like you are writing, like this
Mm.
is your experience of this bike ride, less than it's about, oh, hey, Bob is a bike rider and here's what he did, right? It's just more like, hey, this could be you. So for this one, I'm really excited about it too because this is going to be mom going through the bike ride. So we don't, I'm not naming her or anything, but the hero of the story that we're tracking throughout the new book is going to be, this mom who's going through the race, and just the different things she experiences along the way for that. So yeah, I'm super stoked about it. Alyssa again has outdone herself for this one, and the illustrations are beautiful. I mean, there's some great scenes in the rain and the mud, up on top of other hills, right? Like just like a lot of different, very cool things in there that I'm excited to be able to share. So that one's going to be coming around. I've got ideas for probably 5 or 6 more books after that. They take time, you know what I mean? So I think it'll be a couple years in the making to sort of get through at least what I've got in my head right now. There's a handful of other sort of projects that we're kicking around too. So I'm actually working on, and this one may come out even before the next book, but I'm creating a family biking journal. So something you can have that's a paper, like of course you can record anything on Strava or anything else like that, right? You can record it through any app that you use to track your rides, but we're creating this book that you can have that I would hope would be this very cool like tracking of experiences and shared moments on bike rides between the family that will be on your bookshelf that 20 years from now when your kids are all grown up, you could bring this book out and flip through the pages and think about those bike rides just as a very isolated, targeted like memory piece, right? Of like these were special moments and we recorded some of that stuff in this book. So that's one that's um, yeah, looking to finish up pretty soon here too. So
Love it.
different track, right? It's not like the picture book story, kids picture book, but something else for families to connect about riding bikes together.
No, those are all fantastic ideas. That's great. Super cool. Well, I'm excited for the new books to come out. Where can people find you? Where can they find your book when they want to buy it? How do they get in contact with you?
Yeah, and obviously, like anyone that encounters my stuff, I would love to hear from them. So if you enjoyed the book, I want to hear about it. I'd love to see pictures, things like that. So, I'm really new at all this sort of social media stuff, so I'm learning a ton as I go in terms of how to navigate that. So yeah, anything in terms of like sharing with me, I'd love to hear about it. But so you can find the book on Amazon. That's the easiest place to pick it up. You can go on Amazon and you can search for Morning Ride. You can search under my name, Adam Porter, and you'll find the book there. You can find me on Instagram at Bike Lane Co. That's my sort of the company that's going to be underneath it with all these books here, but that's where you can find me there. That's the main place to go would be on Instagram at Bike Lane Co.
Yeah, and again, I highly recommend it. I'm glad that I found you. I'm glad that I have the book. I'm glad that it's part of our evening repertoire, reading the books. As you know, as a dad, sometimes kids will just get stuck on one book and they want that book over and
Sure,
over and
yeah.
over again. And
Right.
this is my book that I want to read over and over again. So I'm
Right.
always throwing it into the mix. So yeah, I highly recommend people check it out. It's an awesome book. So yeah, it's great.
Yeah. I appreciate that.
Yeah. Well, Adam, thanks again, man, for being on the podcast and sharing your experiences and stuff. Any last other words or any tips or advice? I guess yeah, I forgot to ask you any tips or advice you'd give to somebody wanting to get into writing or thinking about it. What would you kind of tell them?
Yeah. I'd say my tip isn't as serious. Like I think something that really propelled me into being into it was even just the finding a bike that you like, in terms of like it looks cool. That was a big part for me. I love that part. I loved finding a bike that was like, this is a cool looking bike, and like it motivated me to want to ride it. I think the paint job, whatever you get is sort of like the soul of the bike in a lot of ways. So it's like, yeah, I think find something you enjoy like that too. If that is something you care about or something that, makes it more fun, that certainly helped me is to, enjoy, the cool bike that you have, and for me, that was a vintage one, right? It's like the cool old school colors and like design features. I really love that. So that's my non super serious cycling person tip is just like get a cool looking bike.
No, honestly, that's a big piece of it because if it's something that you're going to be riding every day and that you're seeing every day, you want it to bring you joy. Just by looking at it,
Right.
you're like, I'm glad I went with that color. Yeah, when we
Yeah.
were buying mountain bikes, this is years and years ago. My wife, there was this really pretty blue color one that she would, and it was like $50 more. It wasn't even that much of a price point, but she
Yeah.
was like, maybe we should go with this black and green one. And you could tell, I was like, you don't love that. And so I was like, no, let's
Right.
get this blue one. And now
Yeah.
still, 10 years later, we still have that bike and it just brings her so much joy just by seeing that color. So I love,
Yeah. That's
that's a
awesome.
great tip. That's a great,
Yeah.
great piece of advice there, Adam.
You got it.
That's, yeah, that's great. Well, thanks again, man. We'll continue to follow your work you do. I'm excited for the new book coming out and we'll chat again soon. All right.
Yeah. Sounds great. Really appreciate it.